Hello, and welcome to Magic and Mysticism, the podcast, Season 3. With your host, Tommy Burnett. Where each week he talks with mystery performers from all around the world. This week's guest is expert card magician, Howard Hamburg. So sit back and relax, as I introduce your host, Mr. Tommy Burnett.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Magic and Mysticism, the podcast. We are now in Season 3, and this is Episode 2, and so far we are blowing up. We're blowing up, and I'm so happy that you're watching today. Actually, Scott Wells is watching. Great to have you here. I have a wonderful podcast today. My guest today is considered a living legend because he is one, if not the, expert card magician in the whole entire world. This guy is unbelievable. He's laughing now because I'm blowing him up, but he really is the best I've ever seen in my entire life. I am an old man, so I know what I'm talking about. But without any further ado, please help me welcome the unbelievable Howard Hamburg.
Oh, great. Good day to everybody.
I'm so happy to have you here with us today. Thank you for being here. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Tommy.
Great, I'm glad. Why don't we just dive in and we'll hopefully this will become more of a conversation than me just asking you questions. But
Sure.
how did you get into magic in the first place?
Well, as a 12-year-old boy, I worked evenings in a pool hall in Rochester, New York. And I would put the racks, clean them up, put the cues in the racks, make sure the tables were clean. People would be asking for a drink or something, and I would go ahead and go to the bar and bring it to them. And in this pool hall in the very back, there was a door that led to what we call a bust-out joint. You go in there with money and you come out busted. And they had 2 poker tables and 2 dealers. And people went in there and I knew something was going on. I didn't quite know what, but I knew that I could tell by the people that came out that I never saw anyone come out happy. And I used to get 25 cents an hour. And back in 1951, that was a lot of money to me. And one night, there was no one in the room and there was a dealer just cleaning up. And I said, can you show me how to shuffle cards, but they don't get mixed? So he showed me a false shuffle. And I said, can you show me how you can cut the deck and it doesn't change? And he showed me a false cut. When I was 16 years old, I went by a magic shop in Rochester, and there was a young boy who was 14 years old who did some of the most beautiful magic I ever seen. I wasn't interested in magic at that time, but I was curious. And he did things with a ball and vase, and he did things with some cards. And I taught him that false shuffle and that false cut, and he used that to the day he died. And he told me, he said, Howard, he says, I'm going to be one of the best magicians in the world. And it came to fruition. His name was Michael Skinner. And I was friends with Michael right up to 1998 when he passed away. He was 57 years old. Um, Came out to Los Angeles. My parents moved out here, and I went to a magic shop, and I met a fellow by the name of Ray Grismer. And Ray Grismer mentioned that he was a magician, and he happened to be a piano. He played piano, jazz piano, but he was a school teacher. And when he played jazz piano, he had students. He says, you know, I've got a student who is taking piano lessons. And in return, the student is showing him magic. Would you like to meet my piano student? And I was dabbling a little in magic, but I still wasn't there. I was more into that, how do you say, the dark room type of magic, gambling and so forth. It was very intriguing to me. And one day, it was first week in 1970, we walked into the Magic Castle. And he said, Howard, here's my piano student, Dai Vernon. And I remember reading his name in a couple magic books. And so I was astounded. And we sat down, and he asked me, do I like magic? I said, well, I do like. He said, well, would you show me something? And I said, well, I can't do anything. I can do triumph. That was the only magic trick I ever learned. I can do that. And he said, I'll tell you, you should join and become a magician member here. Next Monday, they have auditions. And so I said, but I only do one thing. He says, get a couple books over the weekend and study a few things. And if they ask you what books you read, Ray will give you a list. You can put it up, take a little piece of paper and sort of look down in your hand and mention it. And so that Monday I walked in and I went downstairs, and there were about 5 or 6 people with the Magic Castle that were on this membership committee. The room was dark except the light over the table. And they were asking me questions, and what books have you read? And I read Royal Road to Card Magic, and I mentioned a couple other books. And maybe because, Tommy, I was a little nervous, I was shuffling the cards and just cutting them and shuffling them while they're asking me questions. And finally, one said, well, we don't want to watch you shuffling cards for 5 minutes here. Well, why don't you show us something? I said, I already have. And there was silence. And one of the fellows said, what do you mean? And I turned the deck face up and spread it. It was a new deck order. I was just doing false shuffles and false cuts. Now, I swear to you, this is true. Dai Vernon and Charlie Miller were on that committee, and I didn't know they were in the room. They were in the very back in the dark. And Dai Vernon said, quote, do we need to see anything more, fellas? And so I got into the Magic Castle, never did a card trick.
That's great. So, before we move on, we do have a special guest waiting in the wings.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we kind of tipped it a little bit by mistake, but I think you'll be pleased to see Captain Nipper is here.
Oh my gosh, what a wonderful man.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite people.
Hello, Howard. Wonderful to see you.
How are you, my friend?
I'm good, my friend. How about yourself?
Very, very good.
I'm a mentalist. I shouldn't ask that, right? I should go, oh, I feel something in my throat. I will tell you not to worry about that, because I had that going on a couple days ago, and everybody went, oh my God, this is a sign of Omicron, you might be really down. And I just rested a little bit here and there in between things for a couple days, and my voice is back and I'm fine. So don't worry about it.
Okay, great.
Yeah. But it's wonderful to see you. Listen, everybody who's watching probably knows this, but you are such a gift, not only to your friends, but to all of magic. And it's just, it's you. Unlike, I was talking to somebody the other day, and I said, the thing about Howard, as opposed to lots of people we both know, is, there are a lot of great technicians in the world, and the techies are amazing, but only a handful are really wonderful people. And some of them, of course, your friends. Alan Ackerman, is a big teddy bear. He's an amazing guy. But the thing about you, Howard, is you're absolutely at the top of the game. You blow everyone away. You're acknowledged as the expert around the world, and you're still humble and funny and compassionate and approachable. I mean, you couldn't ask for more. You really could.
I thank you for those very, very kind words, but there's people like when you take a look at the field of magicians that are in the world today, not only is he such a creative genius and just absolutely, I mean, I've admired them for years and years, but more important, he's just a great person, just a nice person. Sometimes it's difficult to find that. You'll find people that are great with magic and they just have no personality, and so forth. And people have asked me over the years, why do you share so much? I said, look, people like the professor and Charlie Miller and Francis Carlyle and the likes, they shared with me. Why wouldn't I share with others? It's like Vernon always said, people say, well, gee, you share all these effects. I said, Vernon always said, it's not the effect, it's the journey to it. That's more important than the effect. They know there's going to be an ending of some magical thing that's going to happen, but it's the journey to it, Yeah. So I don't feel bad by sharing. I like to do that.
Well, you are definitely a great example of that, and you've really carried on the tradition. And to me, that's the best of the castle. It's always been the best of the castle. Is the inside guys are still approachable, pull crap on each other, to be sure.
Oh yeah.
Constantly, but love each other and are there for each other, and you uphold all those things that when I wanted to be a member of the castle when I was a kid, that's what I was hoping to find. And Howard, you've always been an example of that, and it's just wonderful.
I'm blushing, but
but it's true.
I don't deserve those actions.
But it's really cracked me up with some of the things. You tell the stories behind the tricks too, and I love that, because so many of us don't know all the stories or all the history behind some of the things that have happened. I remember when I was a little kid hearing stories from my teachers who said, big names would show up at these events sometimes, and maybe a snowstorm, maybe something would happen, and 3 people or 5 people would show up, and these great names were so great, Kenton, that they would still go ahead and perform for those 3 people or 5 people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we hear those stories now and go, oh, come on, that's ridiculous, nobody would do that. You, my friend, have done that. You have done that for a fact, more than once. So that's the stuff that matters. That's the heart of magic, and we don't get enough of that, I think, online. I love being online. I love all the access, the ability where we don't have to fly to each other's homes to see each other. There's lots of wonderful things about it, but there's also unfortunately, there's been a dumbing down of learning magic, and I do hope that people such as yourself, when you appear on these things, people go, oh, that's how it's supposed to feel. That you can learn all these cool things, but then you also learn the fun stories behind everything. That's boy, what a gift that is. That's just so much fun. I will tell you one quick story. I don't think I've told you before, my friend. I was speaking of Alan Ackerman. I was in Vegas. This is a lot of years ago, and I don't know if it was McBride or who it was, but somebody got me to show up at Darwin's, and I think I was there because I was doing, it was maybe before that, but I was doing like a trade show in Vegas. So they said, come down to the, see some people and just waltz around and, introduce yourself. And I'm thinking, okay, well, nobody knows. I mean, like I'm a student of John Mendoza's. I mean, I might know a few people, but I mean, who knows me really, amongst the Vegas crowd. So I get into this thing and I see all these magicians. And there's this guy, and he does this trick for some magicians, and you see all these people going, oh wow. And he goes over to another pocket and like, whoa. Then he makes a beeline for me, and I'm going, uh-oh. Uh-oh. And this guy goes, Kenton, how you doing? And I'm thinking, whoa, what? Well, I'm great. He goes, hey, let me show you something. And he shows me this thing. And I said, oh, well, that's how do the esotericists. And he said, yeah. He said, but look. And he had it angle palmed. And I went, son of a gun, that's great. And he goes, oh, thanks. I just did it for those guys over there and told them it was a Pharaoh shuffle. And it was Alan Ackerman. That's when I first met Alan.
Alan's just a great guy.
Oh, yeah. Just what a sweetheart. And, some amazing skills. And that's how I started doing that particular steel when in my card work, was because Alan showed me that at the moment. And I went, that's perfect for me,
Did you guys got together at that Wednesday night bar?
Yeah, that's right. The Wednesday night bar. Yes.
Yeah, Skinner was the one that picked that bar out originally for the guys to meet on Wednesday night.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that was the deal.
No, you mentioned some of the fun things that we used to do at the castle, and I'll share a quick story with you. I'm sitting there at the Vernon table, and Charlie Miller's there, the professor, myself, Ray Grismer, Larry Jennings, and Johnny Thompson, and we're just all sitting, just having a nice conversation. And there was some women behind the professors waiting in line to go into the close-up room. And the professor said, Howard, would you mind doing something for my lady friends while they're waiting? He called me Howard. It's a story which I'll share later. But he was the only one that can call me Howard. Well, I'll tell you why. He would say, Howard, how are you? That was his joke, and no one else could use it, and that was it. So I said, fine. And I had someone select a card and went back into the deck, and I sat down. And all of a sudden, in those days, back in the mid-'70s, they used to have a paging system at the castle. And the bar, I heard telephone call line 2, Howard Hamburg. And it was James Patton's voice. And Jim used to work at the main bar. And that's the only bar that could have a view of the Vernon table when you walk in. And I look over there, but I don't see him. I don't see Jim. And I figured, oh, he's just playing around because I'm in the middle of a trick. We would do stuff like that. And about 5 seconds later, second call, line 2, Howard Hamburg. And I look, I still don't see him. And I look over to the professor, and he just shrugs his shoulders. And I stood up and I handed the deck to Johnny Thompson. I said, hold the break till I get back. I took the telephone call, came back and finished the trick. But we would do stuff like that all the time.
Well, yes, you mentioned some wonderful friends we've had through the years, and boy, great influences on us both, to be sure. But I don't want to take up the precious time people have with you, my friend. So I will kick back in the background and continue to watch, and we'll catch up soon. But I just wanted to say hello, and I love you, and thank you for being such a true gift too.
I love you too, buddy, and I'm so surprised. I did not know. I did not know. And I'm honored. I actually am very honored.
Yeah, I'm honored, as you know, to be your friend. So
Thank you so much, pal.
We'll catch up soon.
You got
Great
it.
to see you.
Thank you, Kenton.
Oh, thank you so much, Tommy. I honestly didn't know who was person you were referring to?
Well, I was trying to keep it a secret because I know you love Kenton as much as I do, if not more. But Kenton is very special to me. So um, anyway, uh, you're welcome. Um, so getting back to the Magic Castle.
Yes.
Can we talk a little bit about, or a lot, depending on how much you want to talk about Dai Vernon?
Yes. You know, I was so blessed uh, to have him consider me a friend. Um, I know a lot of people today will say, oh, it's a different era, so forth, so on. Well, that's the era that I really remember. I mean, when you can walk in there and sitting with Vernon is guys like Jimmy Grippo and Francis Carlisle and Jennings and Servan, and oh my gosh, it was just incredible, just incredible. The professor really never taught me anything. He never really taught magicians anything. He made you think.
Mm-hmm.
He made you think. And um, his philosophies, uh, his structure, one of his expressions was uh, great magic is simple, and simple is great magic.
Mm.
And, you know, the point being is that the clarity of what you're doing is more impressive to an audience than all the convoluted things that are occurring.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned so much from that man. And yet there was another great side of him, because we used to play hearts up in the library on the third floor at the time. It was Coup de Bucks, myself, Ray Grismer, and the professor. And God help any magician that walked into the library and wanted to see a book. we were having a hearts game. You didn't interrupt that, you know. No, but he was very, very kind and very giving, very kind. If I showed him some sort of a move that I was working on, he said, "Why don't you think about this? When your hand was in this position, try to think about it." He says, "Let me do it, and now look at me." And I said, "Oh yes, it doesn't look correct." He'd make you think.
Mm.
That's what he would do. You know?
Wow.
And I'm telling you, I learned more from that man than any book I've ever read. I'll give you an example of, if you want. I'll give you a couple of examples. I'm sure that every magician has seen what I'm going to describe. The magician is sitting there at the table. There's a lady sitting to his left, a spectator, and he has two sponge balls on the table. And he places a sponge ball in one hand, her hand, and then takes the other one and puts it in his pocket. And you've heard this saying, everyone's heard it, including myself. How many sponge balls in your hand? And she responds, one. Open your hand, two. I always thought, the first time I saw that people should come out of their chairs applauding. I mean, that's a magical moment if you think about it, so clean.
Mm-hmm.
But it never got the accolades that I always thought it deserved. Yes, there are people applauding and wow and stuff like that, but it's not that bang for the buck, okay?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it bothered me. And I went over to the professor. He was sitting at the table with Charlie. And I explained to him, I said, there's something missing and I don't know what it is. It should really get a lot of applause. He said, did the magician place one in her hand and one in his pocket? And then he said, how many sponge balls in your hand? I said, yeah. He said, she opened her hand, there was two. He says, he didn't finish the sentence. I said, what do you mean? He turns to the girl and says, how many sponge balls in your hand? She says, one. Open your hand. Two. Gotcha. Two. Stupid. Because she couldn't answer the question the right answer. And if you are making that position for her, she's representing the audience. And yes, the audience applauds, but there is a feel of, it wasn't nice. You made her look foolish. And he turned to Charlie, he says, you know, Charlie, you and I talked about this exact same thing 35 years ago. And Howard's the first person to come up and ask that question. I said, so there is, since you discussed it, Professor, there is an answer, isn't there? And he said, yes. Now, this epitomizes his thought process. And this goes true, Tommy, with a card on the table, copper, silver, any type of a transposition type of an effect. I have two sponge balls. I put one in your hand, close it up, young lady, very good, and the other one in my pocket. How many sponge balls should you have in your hand? Should you have, not are there. Mm-hmm. When you say should there be, she's going to say one. She's correct. And when she opens her hand and there's two, 90% more accolades. One word, just one word. What should that card be on the table? Not what is it? Because you're going to make the person feel foolish. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm carrying it too far, but I believe that. And Vernon, it bothered him to a point where he changed the word are there to should there. Mm-hmm. And you know, I did a couple of effects using the word should, and I got more response. Because the should is the answer that they give, and they're not made a fool of. That's just a little example. Yeah. I would like to share another story with you and your audience. Yeah. This changed my whole thinking of magic 180 degrees, completely. I'm sitting at the Vernon table. It was Larry Jennings was sitting there. Charlie, the professor, Ray Grismer, and Michael Skinner. I remember the evening. And Larry asked the professor, what's more important, the beginning, the middle, or the end? And the professor thought for a couple seconds. He said, well, you can't have a strong ending without a strong middle. And you can't have a strong middle without a strong beginning. The beginning is the foundation. The middle is the framework. And the end is the finished effect. However, if all three of those elements were done absolutely perfectly, there's something more important than those three elements, the beginning, the middle, and the end. Now I'm on the edge of my seat. I move up. Larry moved up. And he said, it's the moment. That's what they take home with them. Not the beginning, the middle, or the end, but the moment or moments. And he had his cigar in one hand, and his Johnny Walker Black in the other, and he raised it up and he said, Max Malini taught me that. 6.5, 7 months later, I'm out to dinner with the professor and Jimmy Grippo. And I said to Jimmy, Jimmy, you don't do card to wallet, you do card to sealed envelope. And I'm just curious to why. And he said to me, Howard, let's just think for a moment that the host who's introducing the next magician to appear in the close-up room makes an announcement. Before we get to the scheduled magician, we have a special guest magician who's going to do an effect for you. Put your hands together, and out comes the magician who does card to wallet the way we see it done.
Mm-hmm.
The signing, taking the pen, putting it in the pot, the whole routine. And Jimmy said, we're going to go outside the door, the exit, and we're going to ask everybody, what did they see? And he says, Howard, I'll guarantee you 99% will say the same thing. The magician shuffled a deck, and I had a free choice of a card, and he asked me to sign my name on the face of the card, and the card went back in the deck, and he waved his hand over the deck, and he spread the card's face up, and my card was gone. And the magician reached into his inside pocket of his coat and brought out a sealed envelope, which I opened myself. I did it. And I reached inside, and you're not going to believe it, my signed card. Everybody will say that story. And not one of them mentions the wallet. The moment. That's in their head. Am I against card to the wallet? No, of course not. But I understood his thinking, because it's just a superficial thing that occurred before the ending. They don't say he took out a wallet, it had a zipper. It looked a strange looking wallet. Then it had a seal and then the Queen's writing and wax. No, he removed a sealed envelope, which I tore open myself. Not one person mentions the wallet. And here's the emotional part of the story. He drank Chablis, and he picked up his glass and he said, Dai Vernon taught me that. So it was interesting that Mellini taught Vernon, but Jimmy Gripple got the idea about this from the professor. Yeah, so it's whether you want to do it that way or not, that's up to you. But Jimmy never did it with the wallet. He did it with a sealed envelope, and for that reason that I just explained.
Great. That's a wonderful story. Wow. So much wisdom in there.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
We're mentioning Charlie. So I've got to show you something that happened. It's so funny. Let me just switch screens here, and oh, wait a minute, I'll go over here. Here we go. So Charlie Miller always had Ray Grismer and myself to be preceded to come to his show. And he always told us he was going to do something just for us, which we knew what it was. He said, but if you laugh, I'll never do it again. Now, Charlie was a very serious-minded person, but he had a little levity to himself. Charlie would have someone select a card, comes back, and this is exactly his words. He would say, now, many of you, like myself, have seen other magicians in the past. And in the old days, when I was a youngster, many magicians, not all of them, for some reason, I don't know why, would take the cards, and I'm sure you've seen it, under the table. He says, I don't do that, but then he'd proceed with the effect. When he did this, Tommy, I was biting my lips so hard, I was almost drawing blood. And Ray was holding his breath because we did not want to laugh. He just did the pass right there. Many magicians would take the cards under the table. I don't do that. He just did the pass. And then one day, a bunch of us were sitting at the table, and there was a young member. I knew he was young, and I knew he was a magician member because he had one of those Magic Castle pins, and it was so bright it was almost blinding me. So I knew he was rather new. And he was standing halfway between the bar and the table where we were. And he finally came over and he said, "Excuse me." He said, "I've taken over an hour to have enough courage to come over to ask a question." And the professor said, "Well, what is it, Sonny? What would you like to ask?" He said, "I've been working on a second deal for the last 7 months. And I practice an hour a day, 7 days a week. And I wanted to come over and ask Mr. Miller if he would be kind enough to show me his second deal." Charlie didn't say anything. The cards were in the middle of the table. The professor said, "Charlie, show the youngster your second deal." So Charlie picked up the cards, didn't say a word, and he started to shift them. Now, I know he doesn't have to frame that deck in his hand, but so right off the bat, I knew something was up. As soon as he started doing this, And then he wet his thumb and he pulled his top card back and squared the deck, wet his thumb again, and this is what he did. And the kid, we're looking at each other, and the kid said, "Thank you, Mr. Miller," and he walked off. Vernon looked at Miller and he says, "Charlie, what the hell are you doing?" And Charlie said, "He wanted to see my second deal, so I showed it to him." Because if Charlie did a second deal, the kid wouldn't see it. And Charlie usually was he never joked around, but every so often he would joke. Yeah. I don't know if it's of interest, but I have a goal that I have set when I do my lectures. And that goal is to assure that the younger generation of magicians never forget standing on the shoulders of the giants of magic that gave them the tools they use today. Yep. I think the history of magic is so important. I know you're going to be around, and so are other people in the audience, and some youngster is going to say, "Who's this Vernon guy? Who's this Bellini person?" It's going to happen, and it's a shame. It really is a shame. If I was to give any piece of advice to magicians, and I explained to them, "Look, this isn't the gospel. It's just something for you to think." But the one piece of advice I give to many magicians is stop thinking like a magician and start thinking like a spectator. You'll find your magic will really improve. Do you mind if I give an example of that, Tommy?
Not at all. Please do.
The professor and I were sitting at the table having a conversation. The host came out with a fella who was from France who won a FISM award back in the 70s. And he wanted us to come in as his guests. And so we were pre-seated. And when we met him, he was very neatly dressed. He had a beautiful suit on and a vest and a tie and everything. But when they introduced him, he came out with his jacket off and he put it on the back of the seat and his sleeves rolled up. And I turned, the people are applauding, and I turned to the professor. I said, we're going to have a coin trick. You know, card guy doesn't have to come out with his sleeves rolled up. Maybe a coin guy may. And he had two women sitting at the table holding an imaginary line, a rope. He told them it's imaginary rope. And he put $4 silver on the table. He picked up one and placed it in his hand. And his hand was empty. And he said, I'm going to hang this on this rope. And his hand opened, the coin was gone. He did that to the other coins. Segue, we're out at the Vernon table. And he joined us. And he said to the professor, what did you think of that opening? And Dai didn't usually like to really get into critiquing. He would, if Larry Jennings was sitting there, he'd say, oh, ask Larry, or ask Howard, or ask Bruce, or somebody. And so he says, well, ask Howard. Howard, okay, ask him. So I said, it was wonderful. It was wonderful. I mean, and you could see his shirt just puff out, you know, because I'm sitting with the professor. I said, until you fouled it up. I didn't use the word foul, by the way. I said, you wanted an honest answer. I'm telling you, that's my honest opinion. He said, you saw me go out with the guy. I says, I'm familiar with your technique. It was flawless. As a matter of fact, I tip my hat to you. It was the best I've ever seen with that technique. Absolutely brilliant. He said, where did I, in your opinion, mess up? I said, when you brought the coins back, you only convinced the audience at that moment that they never disappeared. Now, I'm not saying every coin effect where a coin disappears. Matrix is a good example. It goes from here to there to here to there and here. That's different. But under the pretext of what I saw, I personally felt it should not have been brought back. And he turned to the professor and he said, do you agree, Mr. Vernon? And the professor looked at him and said, absolutely. And then he just went back and looked at some mail. Now he said, now the man, and listen, I said, I'm not trying to be nasty. You asked for an opinion. And he said, well, why do you think I did it that way? I said, because your ego says you can. You know, you go up to a 12-year-old boy and you put a coin in your hand, it disappears. So what do? We reach behind his ear and we pull out the coin. Next time with that 12-year-old boy, the coin disappears and that's the end of it. He'll remember you for the rest of his life until he finds out how it's done. He'll remember you and he'll embellish the effect. The first year it's a quarter, then a half a dollar, and it's a silver dollar. Now it's a garbage can. I mean, lid. They embellish it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was my own opinion. I may have been wrong, but that was my opinion. You only convinced the audience that the coins never disappeared. You just had them hidden well. And to support that, where the professor and I always sat, we sat in the far left-hand corner in the top row of the close-up room, where I can see the audience. And when someone was working, especially a non-card man, I would always be watching the audience, not the magician. When those things disappeared, people were like this. When he brought them back, it was.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I just wanted to share that with you.
Oh, that's very astute observation. I usually look at the audience when I'm watching somebody else perform, because it says a lot. It says a lot about the magic and how it's being perceived.
Correct.
So yeah, very good observation. Um, can you tell us a little bit more about Larry Jennings?
Larry, Larry was a great, great guy. I had a wonderful relationship with Larry, but I will share a Larry Jennings story with you. It was again at the castle. Larry, Professor Ray Grismer, and I believe Michael was there also, and Charlie. Charlie always felt comfortable sitting there with Vernon. And again, I was asked to do something for two ladies. And let me switch screens as I tell this story. I had one lady select a card and it was returned. And I had another lady select a card and it was returned. And I said to the second lady, what was the name of your card? And she said, whatever it was. And I reached into my pocket and I removed it. And then I said to the second lady, what was the name of your card? And she gave me the name of it. And I said, don't take your eyes off the deck. And she said, I won't. And I had one card in my hand, and the deck was gone. I love the effect because it's different under different conditions. They were just astounded. The professor thanked me. And I said, thank you. And Charlie nodded his head of approval.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat down, and Larry, now you have to understand this, everyone always, Larry was a big drinker. But Larry was not a good drinker because he had diabetes. He had a lot of medical issues as a young man. And it was one of those nights where he said, that was the worst thing I ever saw. You should have done a top cover pass, not whatever you did there. And Charlie says, Larry, Howard's a friend of ours. You know, you don't embarrass him like that. If you want to be constructive about it, Larry, you show him. But don't embarrass him like he says, I'll show him. Larry had a few beers. So Larry stands up and he's now in front of the two women. He's 3 feet away from the table, but his back is to us. His back is to us. Mm-hmm. Now, Dai was the biggest troublemaker in the castle. I was number 2. I resolved to be, that was what I was going to be, but he was the biggest troublemaker. And he said, God, you must feel terrible, Howard. He says, what he just did in front of all your friends here and make you feel terrible. He said, oh, by the way, he's using redback riders, just like you. Maybe you can think of something. I stood up, Tommy, in less than a quarter of a second. And now I'm 2 feet behind Larry. His back is to us, and he's doing the effect for these people. Now, Larry was up here facing them and doing it. When Larry went to his pocket with the deck, I took my deck and threw it between his legs, and there's cards all over the floor in front of him. He thinks he missed his pocket because he went to his pocket and I threw the cards right at that moment, and this is all he's looking at. And he stepped over these cards and he says, I don't need this crap. And he walked up the stairs up to the library. And, you know, Vernon had a twinkle in his eye and Charlie was actually laughing. I sat down and the professor said to me, I wouldn't sit down if I were you, Howard. He says, I'd go home right now. because Larry's going to be very upset when he finds the deck in his pocket.
That's hilarious.
But Larry was a wonderful technician.
Yeah.
And Vernon used to pit him and Servan against each other all the time. I'd be sitting there with the professor, and Larry come over and said, "I got a new shift to show you, professor." And so I would say, "Let me see it, Larry." And I'm sitting down 2 feet away. I couldn't see anything. It was this is all I saw. That's it, nothing else. And Vernon says, "You know, Bruce showed me that 2 weeks ago with 2 less moves." He'd do the same thing with Bruce. You know, Larry showed me that last week.
So fun.
You know, people, something interesting happened. I just was thinking about it. I go to a Scoriel every year. One Tom Maurice's get together. And I was asked by Camilo Vesquez, I believe it was Camilo, was sitting with Juan, how much practice do I do? And I said, "You don't have to practice." And there was silence because that's not the correct answer. I said, "You don't have to practice. You want to practice. You have to do something. It's a chore. You know, I have to go to work. That tells me the guy hates his job. You know, I have to. But if you say, I want to practice, if you're by yourself in your room, whatever your card where your mat is, then it'll be constructive for you. But if you say, I have to, it's just a waste of time. You know.
Yeah. Very good advice. Yeah.
You know, we're talking about the professor. Can I share with your group something the professor showed me in relationship to triumph?
Yes. You may share whatever you like.
Well, I want to answer your questions too. It's a little different. It's like a lecture, a podcast / lecture or something. So, you know, in Triumph, a person selects a card, and that card has to be passed to the top.
Right.
But you have to do something to get it there, and then you're going to shuffle face up into face down, and then boom, strip them out, cards face up, face down, back to back. Well, when a card is selected, I don't want anything to be done after that. Oh, of course, if you do a pass or whatever you're doing in misdirection, they don't know the difference. But I came up with an idea, and I'll share it with everybody. So a card is selected. And I asked the spectator or spectators about where in the deck is that card going? Where do you think, Tommy? Where can you see it?
Almost half.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I square the deck. And I square here. And I spread the deck. And say it's somewhere here. And now I begin Triumph.
Wow.
So what I'm doing is this. I ask them where it's going because I need them to confirm that it's going in the middle of the deck. And I do put it in, but I put it in on an angle.
Okay.
Right here, there's the angle. There it is.
Right.
And this finger kicks it in a little further because I don't want it out that far. Now I can square the deck here. But I can't square it here because this is sticking out.
Right.
Because it's on an angle. But I square here and I still square here.
Mm-hmm.
But what's preventing this from going in? I just keep these three fingers off the deck. So here's a square up and here's a square up. My fingers aren't, these three fingers aren't touching the deck.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I put down, this is very small. You can hardly even see this.
Right.
When I spread these on the table, you'll notice that all the cards are straight, except this one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So as soon as I spread them, I go like this and say, well, your card's in here somewhere. Now I've taken away that, but it's not even necessary. Since I spread from left to right, I pick them up from left. My thumb nails this card and uses the pack to flip this one face up. And now we do triumph.
Isn't that beautiful?
Now, in the triumph that you see in Stars of Magic and so forth, it was this thing and you strip them out and so forth. But Vernon actually didn't do it that way. Yeah, I'm gonna show you what he did. He did the shuffle, and this card, the King of, I believe was the King of Hearts, right? Yeah, it's on top, the single card. This, again, this goes to his ingenuity. This left finger, forefinger, is curved slightly, not like that, but like this, and it rests on the white border of this card.
Okay.
It has one job to do, and that is that. Nothing else. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't even come back. It just goes like that. It's going to go straight because you have three fingers on this side of the deck and a thumb over here, so it can't go off track regardless. It's you have your own guide here.
Right, right.
While that finger is doing that one move, this hand is doing this. As close to this as possible.
Mm-hmm.
What happens when you do this with this? Watch.
Wow.
Nothing is happening.
That's beautiful.
But this whack thing, he just put in for instructions. But this looks exactly like the deck is going, the face up is going into face down.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing from the truth. It's not. And then he would strip them out from here back to back. And then I will share something with you that I've never heard anyone do. He didn't tell the person in the story to shuffle the cards. He told them to mix them. There was a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And when he did, he said some cards were face down, face up, back to back, blah, 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 blah. Because mixing is more defined than shuffling. And this is what Vernon would say, and I've never heard anyone use the term. There were cards face up, face down, back to back. What was I to do? Which is a normal thing that I would say to myself, geez, what was I to do? And then he paused for a couple seconds and he says, and then I remembered, I'm a magician.
Mm.
He would spread the cards and it'd be one card face up. That was it.
That's a great line.
Yeah, it's a wonderful line.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Howard.
You're welcome. Oh, thank Vernon.
Thank you, guys. Wherever you are. And for all you people watching, you're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah. I mean, what about Bruce Slivan.
Bruce Irvine. Bruce was as close to being perfect in everything he did. I mean, he was just absolutely an incredible technician and came up with a lot of moves. A lot of people thought he was condescending. He had an arrogant attitude. And he did if you didn't understand him. If you were a friend of his, couldn't find anyone nicer. Always helping me out. I'd have a problem. He'd drop everything just to do it, just to help me. Though, to show you arrogancy, I was in a close-up room with Ray, and he was performing. And he had a lady sitting to his left that must have been around 60 years old. And he never used a chair, except he brought the chair in when he did chink-a-chink.
Uh-huh.
He used to close with that, chink-a-chink, and he sat down and made all the crazy sounds. But he usually stood up when he did all this magic. And he just got through doing something, and the audience was going crazy, and the applause subsided. And he happened to look to his left, and the lady was looking up, just staring at him, looking up. And she said, "How do you do this?" I mean, it was real. It wasn't put on. How do you do this? And he had the chair sitting to his left, and he put his left foot on top of the chair, put his hand on his knee and his hand around his throat area. And he said, "Look, it's my expertise versus your feeble senses." Your 5 feeble senses. Yeah, it's my expertise versus your 5 feeble senses. So he introduced the linking finger ring routine the first time we ever saw it on the West Coast.
Mm.
He was in the parlor, and Ray Grismer and I were his guests. And he had for the parlor, it's perfect for blocking, because in the parlor you have the curtain here where the magician comes out, the audience is over here, and so you have a pillar here, and a pillar, and a curtain. So he would have the 3 individuals. The blocking was just perfect. So he asked for he went and borrowed a ring. He had the lady come down, stand near the pillar, and another person. And when he went to the first lady, he said, "This is your ring?" He said, "Yes." And you could hear click. There was a click. I could hear a click. He's showing the ring. He's linking. Click. And I immediately looked to my left at the audience, because I didn't want to look behind me. I just looked 2 or 3 rows to see if there was any response by people, but I didn't see any. So he finished the effect. After he was through, Ray and I stayed. He said, "What'd you think?" I said, "Bruce, I got to let you know, when you link the first ring with the person to your left at that pillar, I heard click." I said, "I checked immediately. I didn't see anyone else hearing it, but I heard click." He said, "Wait a minute. Let's see. Hi, my name is Bruce Irvine. How are you? May I borrow your..." Thank you. Thank you, Howard. I appreciate it. Would you stay for the next show? So Ray and I stayed. Now he gets over to this other person, and as he takes the ring, he slams his foot down on the carpet so loud, he says, "Was that better, Howard?" That was good. But he technically, the guy was superb, really, really superb.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. But there was a friction between him and excuse me, there was a friction between him and Larry for some reason. I don't know why.
Huh.
I don't know why.
Interesting.
We mentioned Francis Carlisle. I could tell you something about that, Francis was wonderful. Fortunately, myself and another fellow, Bert Green, we split the cost of a hotel that was on. It wasn't a nice place, but a lot of cheap rooms, and we had him there. We paid for 6 months, his last 6 months of his life, for a place to stay. And then he ended up at Long Beach at Memorial Hospital, and he passed away there. But he was a great guy. So one evening, he came over to the professor and I, and he was going to do a lecture for magicians in the close-up room. And of course, everyone knew about it a week ahead of time, and they all signed up because everyone wanted to see Francis Carlisle. And the professor said, Howard, why don't you introduce him? And I said, Professor, you were in New York with him. You should introduce him, not me. And so Dai introduced him, and then Dai and I were sitting in our regular seats. And, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, before I get there. Dai said he would introduce him. And Francis said, during the lecture, he's going to have one of the magicians select a card and place it back into the deck. He says, now, I'm going to tell all the magicians, Howard, don't take your eyes off the deck. Don't you watch the deck. Watch the magicians. So now we're sitting in our regular seats, and he has someone select a card, and card comes back, and he says to the audience, don't take your eyes off the deck. And so now I'm watching, and what he did was like a tick. He did this. That's what he did. And I saw 25 sets of eyes. The heads just popped right up. He told him, don't take your eyes off the deck. And he did this, and I saw 25 heads come right up off, because he called it bouncing their eyes off the deck. It's like reaching for your glasses. They'll follow that movement. He did this, and it was incredible. It was like an orchestration. Everyone's head came right off that deck at the same time. And he turns to Vernon and myself, and he says, maybe I should now talk about misdirection. He just did it. But yeah, that little, he just did this, and he didn't do this. He just that was it. Everyone's head just came straight up off the watching the deck.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I don't even know how to respond to that.
Well, again, it was, it's just the way they thought, it's, they really.
That's brilliant. It's brilliant. So I know you knew Jerry Andrews.
Oh, yeah.
Can you talk about him a little bit?
Jerry Andrus never liked people that said a swear word. And Jerry Andrus hated people, I don't want to use the word hate, but he didn't have any respect for people who lied. If he said that was the three of spades face down on the table, it was the three of spades. He lived in Albany, Oregon. I was fortunate enough to be a house guest of his a couple of times. He called it the House of Chaos, because he had a treadmill that he hooked up to a TV, and he used the treadmill as a generator to keep the TV running. I mean, this guy he had some incredible, I mean, look at the stuff that he had, you know, that Ground Zero and that disc that had the circles on it that made his head look smaller and bigger after, you know, that was his idea, though. Someone was appearing at the castle, I won't mention their names, who claimed it was his. And afterwards, I went up to him when there was nobody in the room, and I said, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you did not create that, because I have the original one and the date of the envelope that it came in, and it was Jerry Anders. Oh, well, I was the one that did it with like a motorized thing to make it go round. Jeez, I mean, okay. But he was incredible with his stuff. I mean, anyone could pick up some of, you know, his panoramic shift and sidewind. All those things are just apps. And of course, the routine with using the small cards. He used bridge-sized cards, but he had a hand that could cover my table. He had huge. I mean, his hands were. This was one hand. I mean, he had huge hands, but he used bridge-sized cards. And I asked him why, and he said because on that one where he tears the half a dollar appears and he tears it, and then another half. He wanted to use the smaller cards, so he says I didn't want to use small cards for that, and then bigger cards. So he just used the Fox Lake bridge-sized card. Yeah. Wow. But a real gentleman, great guy. Okay.
Now, you told me a story about Jimmy Grippo. I think it was Jimmy Grippo.
Oh, at the castle?
Yeah, with the index.
With the yeah, that happened at the Vernon table again. You know, God, I tell you, we should get, some of us should get together and just write a book on all these things that happened, because it was just incredible. So Jimmy Grippo, as most of you know, developed a tremendous index that he was superb using. I mean, it was just incredible. And the professor wanted so badly to see how this thing was made. And there was one night where it was Jimmy and myself and the professor, and I forgot there. I think Charlie again was sitting there. And Jimmy said, where's the bathroom? No. From where the Vernon table was, he just looked to the right and you could see past the stairs the door that goes to the bathroom. So I point to it. And he took his jacket off and he left it on the seat and he went to the bathroom. And I sort of looked at Vernon, and Vernon's watching him. He's like looking as he's walking. And as soon as he went into that door and the door closed, the professor said, if anyone ever says anything, I'll never be friends with you again. He said, Howard, hand me his jacket. Jimmy took his jacket off, left it on the seat. So I handed it, and he took the index out. And he says, there was a rubber band here and another rubber band there, and there was part of a card sticking out here, and then he had 4 spades this way and 6 spades that way. And Vernon was, how the hell does this thing work? And he can't figure the damn thing out. So he put it back into his pocket, because he didn't want to get caught with it. He gave me the jacket and I put it back on the seat. About 2 or 3 weeks later, when Jimmy was revisiting the castle, and he says to me, what did Vernon do when he looked at the index? I said, what are you talking about? I don't want to get anyone in trouble. He says, I know he did. He said, you can be honest with me, Howard. Don't worry about it. I said, well, he took it out. He couldn't figure the damn thing out. He said, he knew if he left his jacket on that chair and went to the bathroom, he knew Vernon would look at the index. So what he put in his pocket was something that had nothing to do with anything. cards sticking out, rubber bands here. It wasn't the end, because he knew Vernon would want to take a look at it.
I love this story. I love this story. One of our viewers, Andy Russell from the UK, is asking if you can perform the paperclip trick.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'll be more than happy to actually. See, all I need is a paperclip, I guess. So I will go down here and take out a to review while I'm shuffling. Let's see. You know, it's immaterial to what card I use. I'm going to use the 10 of clubs. That's going to be my card.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to place the 10 of clubs somewhere close to the middle of the deck. I'm going to cast a shadow over the deck. Did you see anything unusual happen?
No.
That shadow brought my card, the 10 of clubs, from the middle of the deck all the way past the cards and returned itself right to the top where it started. So let's forget my card, the 10 of clubs. You select a card. So they select a card.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, I'm going to mark your card with this, what do you call these things? A paper clip. You can see it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll place your card into the deck with the paper clip. Now remember, my card, the 10 of clubs, is on top of the deck. I'm going to cast that shadow, and something interesting happens. Your card? Now I ask them to hold out their hands palm up, openly, and I say, here, I place it on their palm, and I say, place your other hand on top. And now I say, I'm going to cast 3 shadows. And by passing 3 shadows, my card is now the only card that's face down. I go through. I say, face down in between your hands. And they open their hands and they're holding my card. And they always do this.
I love that. It's beautiful.
That's the paper. What, did he want an explanation of this?
If you want,
Oh, I don't care. I mean, it's in my notes, but I'll be more than happy to.
that'll be a good segue to talk about your notes.
Okay. I happen to like to do a double from the middle because I talk with my hands a lot when I'm. I mean, I could very well just do this and do a double lift that way, but I go in here and I listen for the clicks, and I say, well, I'll use the 9 of clubs, and it's got a nice sound here, and it's very available to throw back on the deck.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, I'll place my card, the 9 of clubs, here somewhere in the middle, and I'm going to cast a shadow. Now this is all set up for their card. This thing with the shadow. I'm going to cast a shadow. Do you see anything? No. That shadow has brought my card, the 9 of clubs, from the middle of the deck all the way back to the top where it started. So let's forget my card, the 9 of clubs. If I wanted you to forget my card, I would say forget my card, correct? But I don't want you to forget my card. So I say, forget my card, the 9 of clubs. I repeat it because I want them to remember it. Otherwise, I would say, forget my card. So now they have a free selection of a card. Now let's get something different for color. And I said, I'm going to mark your card. Now this pin, this clip has to go over to this side, but this looks rather strange to do it that way. So I just put it on halfway, about an inch, a little over an inch from the top. I say, well, mark your card with this, what do you call these things? Oh yeah, paper clip. So I've accomplished all this.
Mhm.
As I show them the card, I'm doing tilt here.
Right.
I said, I'll place your card somewhere here in the middle of the deck with the paper clip. There's enough flesh here on the base of my thumb to cover this.
Mhm.
And so now I do it in this manner, but I'll do it this way so you can see it maybe. I say, remember my card, the 9 of clubs, and watch. See, it's going to go right back under that paper clip. I push it out here, but it's in this position. And bring it back and square it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what it looks like. I say, remember my card, the 9 of clubs, is on the top. Now I'm right in here.
Mm-hmm.
I cover, and there's a shadow, and I cast the shadow, and now they're looking at it like it came from nowhere. That was the setup on the first card. Now it's easy for me to square this up, but this has to go over here now. Simple. What was your card? They tell me. They see their card, and I turn it down. Now it's where I need it. This is going to be the best second deal you ever made in your life. I could drive a truck through there. I put my finger in there and my thumb on top. I push with my finger and pull with my thumb. And I say, here, place this in your hand.
Wow.
So that's in their hand now. And now I don't say, I say I'm going to do 3 shadows. That's caused my card, the 9 of clubs, to be the only card face down. And I do this, stop, go a little further, face down, in between your hands, and that's it. That's the paperclip trick.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Howard.
You're welcome.
Thank you for sharing it. And again, to you people watching, you're welcome.
No, that's happens to be. I don't even have a copy of it here. I didn't even do one.
Is that in your D-notes?
Yeah, I'll just talk about it for a half a second here.
Yeah, good. I have your email ready to put up on the screen.
It's all right. The D notes, I will share the story of why it is. It's a very emotional story with me. But this was a picture that was taken, and he didn't pose for it, but about 5 years later, I noticed you can see the coin back clip right here.
Oh,
He didn't. It just happened that that it happened that at that moment it was shot. The coin is back clipped, and he put to my friend Howard. Yeah. Also, I will show you here this wonderful group picture. I don't know. Can you see it?
yeah.
Okay. That's Michael Skinner. And that's yours truly.
Wow.
And that's David Roth.
Mm-hmm.
That's Earl Nelson.
Wow.
And that over here is Jeff Altman,
Mm-hmm.
and that's Bert Green, that's Jules Lanier, and that's Steve Freeman.
Oh, wow.
We were at a magic shop, and someone said, "Let's take a group picture."
Mm-hmm.
I'm so happy we did. Yeah, but a lot of some of the effects that I have in here, I will show you. This is the paperclip trick.
Mm-hmm.
So I had line drawings done with arrows so you can see exactly how to do this thing with the explanation. And there's a couple other effects that I had line drawings on that I did. There's 40 pages.
Mm-hmm.
This is the best thing that I've ever created. And
Great trick.
if there's time, and this is up to you, I'd like to do it.
Oh, yeah, we have plenty of time. But before you do that, I want to put your email up on the screen.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. All they have to do is email me, and I will send an email back. And for your group, both this effect and the D notes, I'm willing to let go for $45, and that includes a special mailer that prevents bending, shipping, taxes, mailing, everything, just $45.
Wow.
But I will do this effect for you guys.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So all I need from the person is just their name and their email address, and then I'll email them back and tell them what they have to do as far as getting it to me and so forth. So I don't take PayPal or anything. So
Great. Thank you, Howard.
if you want me to do that, I can do this effect if you'd like me to do it now.
Yes. Yes. Please. Please. I've seen you do it many times, but I love it every time you do it.
Americans consider 7 their lucky number. We also consider 11 a fairly lucky number. 7 is a lucky number. I just like we respect the Irish 4-leaf clover as a lucky object. I have a friend in Beijing who tells me that Asians considered 8 their lucky number. I thought it was because it's infinity. There's no end to it. But he said that's not the reason. There was another reason that 8 is their lucky number. My lucky number happens to be 13. And it works with certain cards. And we'll get back to that in a moment. So I would like someone to name a card 2 through a 10, let's say. But it doesn't have to be the suit, just the number.
Okay, so let's say somebody names the number 3.
Okay. And now I have someone else name a number,
And
but not a 3.
right. Let's go with 8.
8. Here we got an 8. And all right. Now, one of you gave me an 8, and one of you gave me a 3, right? And then I would ask who gave me the 3. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that card to count to my lucky number. That's a 3. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I'm just going to count to 13. I'm going to take the 3 and leave it face up and bury it. One of you gave me an 8. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Same procedure. Bury it. Now, jokers are wild in every card game I've ever played in. So I'd like a third person to give me a number between 2 and 13 that they'd like this to be. What you would like it to be?
Let's go with 9.
9,
Mhm.
10, 11, 12, 13. So all the procedures are the same. So the joker and the 3 and the 8 arrive where they are by using 13. I'm going to remove the, I got to spread it more. I'm going to remove the 3 and the 8 and the joker with the card adjacent to it. Adjacent to the 3, we have an ace. Adjacent to the 8, we have an ace. Adjacent to the joker, we have an ace. To find the last ace, we're going to add up your numbers. 3 and 8 is 11. What did you make this?
9.
11 and 9 is
20.
20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. The only combination of your 3, your 8, you making that a 9 to find the last ace. Oh, at the beginning, I mentioned 13 was a lucky number for certain cards. And by now you can see what they are. Aces. It doesn't work with any other card in the deck except aces. And I can prove it. Watch. So thank you for selecting a 3. Thank you for someone else selecting an 8. Thank you for someone else for making this a 9, or this cannot possibly happen. That is Mystical 13. How difficult is it to do? If you can hold the break on one card at the beginning of the effect is finished. That's it.
That's beautiful.
So there's no finger flinging. You don't have to do passes. You don't have to do anything.
Yeah, I love that effect. You've done that for me at least a dozen times, and it's I mean, I know how, I kind of know how it works, but
Well, what's interesting about the effect, which is what I tried to put into this, when I introduced this at Magic Live, and I won't mention the name of the magician, he's a friend of mine and he's very well known internationally. He came up to me afterwards. He says, "Howard, you got me. I didn't see the deck switch." And I said, "Thank you very much." Well, we went out to dinner that night, and I said to him, "Before we order food, I have to be honest with you, there was no deck switch. There's such a time delay between the deck that you saw where you removed the cards. There's such a time delay that from the time now that I show it blank, every time I've done this, I've had a comment from lay people, and I've had it from magicians. What is it, rough and smooth? Because they saw a full deck here. How can these become blank when they chose cards out of this full deck? Because there's a time delay, and that's when you use that to an advantage. When from point A to point C, they forget about B, and that's the reason, you know. So, but that and in the book itself that I have, it's very well written as far as instructions and so forth. So that's Mystical 13. So we can continue with some more questions if you'd like.
yeah. So before we do that, I just want to remind people your email is hhamburg4@gmail.com. if you're interested in that bundle, just send him an email saying that you saw him on Magic and Mysticism. And
Right, they must mention that because it's just a special price that I'm gonna give out
yeah,
for your friends.
yeah. And I really appreciate it, Howard. I'm definitely going to be getting it for myself because I think it's great.
Now there is a situation. I just see someone put out here. What about postage outside probably they meant the United States?
Uh,
I don't know how much the postage is for this, so I will find out from the post office, and maybe for the difference of what I would have had, I'll add a few dollars or something to it. I don't know, but it comes in a special mailer that I went and bought, and I'll get to that. I'm not going to try to take advantage of the fact, but I don't want to eat a big, I don't think it's going to take that much because it's not that weight. It's not a lot of weight.
yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, I have a lot of other questions, but I think I'd rather hear stories about Mike Skinner, Johnny Thompson, and Martin Nance.
Michael Skinner, what a talent, man. People ask me who I consider one of the best magicians I've ever met in my life, and Michael's right there. I mean, just take a look at the stuff that he came out with. I mean, that cigarette paper tear of his, if you ever have a chance to see it, it's just a thing of beauty. He did that work for me in his apartment in Vegas, and I got out of the chair and applauded. Just him and I are there, get out of the chair, and I'm applauding. Yeah, he and just a kind-hearted guy. My late wife and I went to the Golden Nugget to have to go to the Golden Nugget. We weren't staying downtown in Vegas, but we wanted to go in there, and we went into Lily Langtree's, which is a restaurant. And we were sitting at the table, and I looked across the room, and Michael was doing table hopping. He worked for Steve Wynn, who owned the Golden Nugget. And I wasn't going to bother him. And then he happened to look up, and he saw me, and he left his cards and everything on that person's table and came over and sat down. He told him, "I'll be back." Yeah, great guy. Martin. The one thing you never wanted to ask Martin is, "Martin, how you feel today?" Because you're in for an hour. But nobody in the world, as far as I was concerned, could play the part of a card sheet better than him as that character. That's a rough thing to do, is to play the part of a card sheet. People just don't want to see all that. I mean, it's not of interest. It's not a card trick. It's where do you want the aces? Where do you want the kings? That sort of stuff. And but he came out with that plaid jacket and that little mustache of his and that flashy rings. And oh man, if he was alive, he'd kill me for telling this story. But I'll tell it. So it was Vernon was to my left, and Ray Grismer was to my right. Earl Nelson was to my right, then me, then the professor, and then Ray Grismer. We were preceded. We're up in the top row. And Martin had asked the host, "Please have two people at the table that can shuffle cards." Ladies and gentlemen, the charming cheat comes out. And I swear to you, I'm not making the story up. Call Earl Nelson, he'll tell you. And he comes out and he takes out a brand new deck of cards, takes the cellophane off and everything, breaks the stamp, and spreads the cards and takes the ad cards out and the joker. He said, "Can you shuffle?" He said, "Yes." He said, "What about you?" He said, "Yes." So he gives him half, gives him half. So he says, "Shuffle. Now give him half, give him your half, and then you cut and then shuffle. You cut and give him your half." So I turned to Vern. I said, "We're gonna have a deck switch because there's too much going on here with these shuffle, shuffle, cut, cut." And Martin had a wonderful deck switch he did from his coat pocket. It was very, very good. It would take the money down, believe me. And so he employed that. And now the deck is on the table. And he said, "Let's see, you only shuffled twice, didn't you?" And the guy said, "No, I shuffled 4 times." "Oh, you did you cut?" "Oh, yeah, I cut 3 times." And he deals 26 pairs of cards face down on the table. He says, "Touch a pair." Turns over 2 red 7s. Touch another pair, 2 black jacks. The audience goes ballistic. He shuffled and shuffled, and he never touched the 2 red 9s. From pair 1 to pair 9, pandemonium, absolute pandemonium. I mean, pictures were coming off the walls at the castle. People were going crazy. They never seen anything like this. From pair 10 to pair 15, it was. From 16 to 25, I've heard more noise in a mortuary. It was silent. And he has two cards still face down, turns them over, 2 red kings. "What did you think of that?" That's what he said. "What did you think of that?" I swear to you, I'm not making this up. This is what we heard. Vernon was asleep and he cut wind at exactly. I'm not making, I can't make these stories up. If you ask Earl Nelson, he'll verify because he's alive. But yeah, just at that moment, what did you think of that? Who else did you mention?
Well, Johnny Thompson.
Oh, Johnny, my God. Johnny and Max Maven are the 2 giants being plethoras of magic history and magic. Incredible. Johnny, I would, oh gosh, I would go over to his place and we'd all end up at this one Chinese place on Paradise Road in Las Vegas, go out for having dinner, come back to his house till 5 a.m, sit at the dining room table and just do card stuff. And maybe Jeff McBride would come over, or Paul Behill would come over, and it was, it's funny because of the questions and things that you're asking. People know that I don't do magic as a vocation. I chose not to. There was a certain reason. And they have asked me in the past, "So what does magic mean to you?" And I answer the same way, Tommy. Memories and friendships. That's what magic means to me. They can't take that away from me. And that's maybe why I am the way I am, because I have all these wonderful memories and wonderful friendships. It's very touching to me. And Johnny, just just incredible. I mean, I know a lot of people, you know, he was with the Harmonica Cats.
Wow.
He played the bass harmonica. He would bring it out. It's this big. Yeah, the Harmonica Cats were the biggest harmonica group that there was. He played with them before he got into doing the Thompsonian act.
Mhm, mhm.
But boy, was Johnny's just incredible, and such a sweetheart. Pam was such a wonderful person to me. Oh my God, yeah,
Wow.
you know.
Well, I know he was a big influence. I never met him. Um, and that's one of my biggest regrets. But he was definitely a big influence on me growing up when he was doing the Tom Soniac. Um,
You know, it's a classic, wasn't it?
yeah, it really was a very funny man. And from what I understand, a real sweetheart. And it's too bad I think we would have gotten along. But
Hmm.
you know, um, any stories about Max Maven?
Pardon me?
Any stories about Max Maven?
Max is Max. I mean, a lot of people don't know this. I may be a little off on the numbers, but Max has credits for, I think, over 700 card tricks. Over 700 card tricks. When we
Mhm.
think of Max, we're thinking of the mentalism and so forth. But yeah, wow, great stuff.
Yeah,
All of and his presentation are done just great.
yeah, yeah.
And as a friend, I love the guy. He's he's so respected, and he's just a wonderful person, you know. But what a talent.
I hope to have him on the show one day.
That would be nice.
Would be, yeah. Um, so we're almost at the 2 hour mark. I don't know if you're aware of that. It's fine with me. But um, I know you mentioned you wanted to give some advice to young people. Um,
Well, yeah, that one thing about stop thinking like a magician, start thinking
oh, okay.
like a spectator is the one piece of advice that I tell magician, and I'll tell a young magician, listen, you can think about it or you can discard it. It's up to you.
Mhm.
But you'll just try it and you'll find out, because we get wrapped up in doing things in magic that's not necessary. It's like, you know, the saying, you know, why run when you're not being chased? I see a lot of magicians doing things that you don't need to do. You know, here's a quick example of it. You know, I got this from Vernon. Let's see if let's say the professor had a stack,
Yeah.
and listen, he could have done a false shuffle, a false cut with the best of them, but he would do things, and then later on, he's God, he never even shuffled the cards, but you never thought about it because he said, "Oh, before we start, oh, that deck won't work. That's a blank." He said, "Before we start," and he would have a joker in here. So let me do that for you. We have a joker in the deck. And he said, "Oh, before we start, let's make sure there's no joke. Ah, there is a joker. We won't need it." But he's
Mhm.
got a stack. But the purpose of this is, what are they looking at after he removed the joker, which he didn't need?
Right.
They're looking at a mixed deck.
Right.
They're looking right at a stack.
Yeah.
And if you had a stack that was up here, I mean, obvious, like 4 aces, 4 kings, or whatever, he would do this. Oh,
Yeah.
we don't need the joker. And he's got his hand covering it. But you still see a mixed deck, and then he put the cards together. Yeah, that was a little thing that Vernon used to do. Now, what's really funny about it is every time he did that, I knew he had a stacked deck because I was with him for 22 years. So I knew that he had something when he did that. So one time we're downstairs in the Hat and Hair, and Jennings was sitting there at the table, and Vernon, he took the cards, and I know he was doing a false shuffle. I know. I mean, I know his shuffle. I know his cut and everything. And he spread the cards. He says, "Oh yeah, we won't be needing the joker." So I knew. I had him nailed. I knew that he, you know. And there was some spectators sitting at the table. He says, "Can you shuffle cards? Go ahead." He had the guy shuffle the cards. This whole thing was a ploy. He didn't have a stack, and he just did this for me to make me think he had a stack. And then he hands the deck to someone to shuffle. The one time we were down in the Hat and Hair, and there was a bunch of us sitting there, and he did this little ploy. You know, he says, "Oh, let's make sure there's no joker in here." Yeah, I'm glad I caught that. We don't need it. And he handed the deck to Larry Jennings. He said, "Larry, shuffle them." Larry had a beer in his hand. And Vernon reached across the table and handed the deck to his beer hand and said, "Oh, you're busy. Howard, would you shuffle them?" And I false shuffled the cards and returned it back to him. But here he sees Larry with a drink. He says, "Larry, would you mind? Oh, you're busy. Howard, would you? So I false shuffle and false cut, and he did a miracle.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
We have a couple questions
Sure.
from audience members. Eddie McCall said,
Oh, Eddie from Glasgow.
yeah, he wants to know if you can speak about your visit to Glasgow.
Oh my God, what wonderful guys up there. Yeah, I went up there, and luckily or fortunately, Roy Walton was alive. And when I arrived, I remember Eddie was so sweet. He took me, I think, from the airport to the hotel, and it was one of those drizzly nights. And he says, "I'll pick you up in an hour. You know, time just to freshen up." I had come in from Spain, from Escorial. That's flew over from Spain to Glasgow, and we went to some big old hotel. In the lobby, we're sitting there, and there was a fireplace that you could literally walk through standing up. It was one of those big fireplaces.
Wow.
And who comes in but beside Eddie? I mean, was Roy Walton, Gordon Bruce, Andrew. You know, oh my God, I'm you know, I after that session, when I was back at the hotel, I was just getting ready to go to bed. I actually broke down in tears. I said, "My God, look at these greats of magic that I'm sitting with. Wow, I mean, things like that just touch me. I mean, oh my God, yeah, they couldn't have been nicer." Eddie was and then Eddie came over and visited here, and arranged a few things for Eddie to we went and saw Copperfield as Copperfield's guest, and before the show, they brought us backstage to take a picture with him. And yeah, Eddie's a wonderful technician.
Well, first of all, Dorothy Deacon says hello.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, she has that the Houdini Museum in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I love Dorothy. And secondly, Terry Terrell would like you to talk about the D story, whatever that is.
Okay. You know, for 22 years, the professor called me Howard.
Mm-hmm.
How are you? Everything was Howard.
Mm-hmm.
And one night I came home from work, and it was my birthday, and my late wife, Barbara, said, "Come on, let's go out and celebrate your birthday." And I said, "Nah, I'll go and get some food out of, to go and bring it home or something. I don't feel like going out to celebrate my birthday." But like a good wife, you're in the car, make a left, make a right, make a left, and you end up somewhere, and ended up at this restaurant. And we're walking down this hall. The doors open, and there's roughly 65 of my friends. Tony Giorgio, who I knew for 53 years, one of the best card muckers I've ever met, great dice guy. Mm-hmm. He was there, Charlie was there, Michael, all my friends, the professor. And the professor came over and gave me, my wife had set this up, of course. And the professor came over, let's see if I can find it here, and gave me a birthday card. It said, "To my friend Howard." And I will show you that card because someone asked for a picture of it. Mm-hmm. Here's the card. Wow. And the professor wrote inside 25 ways of calling a prostitute a prostitute. all his writings here. And he signed it, Dai Vernon. And on the side it says, "Girl of negotiable affections." And he put on the bottom, "My favorite." That was his favorite. So he had to put that down there. That's my favorite. But some of them, there's no swearing. Daughter of joy, that's a prostitute. Give and take girl, a lady for hire, love peddler, sailor's delight. These are all from the 1920s. Right. But he hand wrote all these things. That was the card the professor gave me for my birthday. At about 11 o'clock that night, he came over to see me, and he handed me an envelope to my friend Howard. And my wife was with me, and he says, "Howard," he says, I want you to don't look at this card. It's a special card. Don't look at it here." He said, "And don't look at it in the car." He said, "Only look at it when you get home." And he looked at my wife. He said, "Barbara, would you make sure that he follows my instructions?" My wife said, "Of course, Professor." I get home. I thank my wife for the wonderful evening. And she said, "Oh yeah, the professor gave you a special card." I reached in my pocket and I took out an envelope that says, "Thank you for your friendship." It says, "Howard, thank you for your friendship." Mm. And I inside the card was a coin envelope, a little coin envelope. Mm-hmm. And I held it up to the light. There was something in it. And I tore the envelope open and I poured onto my hand the letter D. For 22 years, he called me Howard. and he gave me that damn D on my birthday.
Oh,
And so that's why I have this on the cover. People say, what is the significance of it? Well, now you know. It was that envelope with the D coming out.
wow.
And I went back to the castle a few nights later. How are you? We never discussed it. There was no need to discuss. But for 22 years, he called me Howard. Then I got a phone call from his doctor when he was sick and down with his son Bob down in San Diego, Robert. And he said he's not doing good, and he was on morphine and so forth. And he said, Howard's on the phone. And I heard some noise in the background. And he says, how are you? And I said, how are you, Professor? And we only talked for maybe 15 seconds. I said, I love you, Professor. And he said, I love you too, how are? And then 3 days later, his doctor called me and said he passed away.
Mm.
That's why it's a very emotional story for me.
Yeah.
But that explains what this is all, what that's about.
Yeah.
I don't explain it in the book. I explain to people saying, I got this thing. What is the significance of this? Well, now you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
Yeah. Unless there's anything else you really want to talk about, I think it might be a good way to end for today. And maybe you can come back again and we can do another.
Be my pleasure. If any of those that had my email that you put up, if they have a question regarding something, shoot it off to me. I'm being born in 1939, and I'll let you do the math. Well, that's easy. I'm 82, so you better send it off to me as soon as possible. Yeah, but listen, magic has been a wonderful thing for me. I've met so many wonderful people and made friends with so many people, and that's what it's all about, It's not the trick. It's not the trick.
Yeah.
But thank you. You made it easy for me.
Thank you, Howard.
Yeah, you're welcome.
My friend Renee Clement, I'm not sure if you know Renee, says, thanks, Howard. It was fun. See you next week. So I guess you do know Renee. Um, Renee Clement.
Pardon
You know Renee Clement?
Oh, yes.
That was him. He says, thank you, and he'll see you next week.
Absolutely.
Oh, so thank you again, Howard.
You're more than welcome, Tommy. Anytime, buddy.
Thank you for being my friend. I really appreciate
Oh, that's very touching to me. It means a lot.
you being in my life. It really means a lot. And I'll talk to you in a second.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for watching today. This is a different setup than normal, and I'm probably going to be going back to the regular format because it is a little easier for me, but I wanted this to be easier for Howard, so I did it on Zoom. But you'll still be able to watch on Facebook, but it'll be easier for me to do it from StreamYard. I also want to thank our special guest today, Mr. Kenton Lepper, for popping in to say hi. And Kenton is a dear friend and also my mentor and teacher, and it's always a pleasure to see you, my friend. And
Pleasure to see you and two of my friends.
so having this has been one of my best podcasts yet. They keep getting better, and it's not because of me. I get to be here and participate, and it's like a dream come true for me. So, having said that, I always close by saying, remember the magic is inside of you. It isn't in your props. Next week. My guest next week is John Morton from the UK, and a very inventive creator and performer, and we'll be talking with him this week. So, having said that, we'll see you next week. Take care.